The Queen arrives in Australia on Wednesday for her 16th visit to Australia, possibly her last. It's been a low-key build-up to this tour, in dramatic contrast to the monarch's first visit in 1954. Back then, 3/4 of the population reportedly turned out to see Her Majesty. Although she won't draw those numbers now, there's still a deep, enduring affection for the Queen, as Natasha Johnson reports.
In the great white ship, riding at anchor, royal as a swan, is the Queen we have never seen.
When the Queen set foot on Australian soil for the first time, you couldn't hear yourself talk. It was amazing. You could hear the crescendo of the crowds throughout the streets. As the car made its way through the Royal Progress, you could hear the crowds roaring with applause.
It was a momentous occasion in Australian history, the first visit by a reigning monarch, and Cecil Ballard, now 75, was there. He camped out amongst the estimated 1 million people who welcomed her to Sydney.
Down here somewhere. We just couldn't believe our eyes that here was the Queen of England, Queen of Australia, setting foot on Australian soil for the first time with her husband. And I think we were just so excited we couldn't contain ourselves.
The Royal Progress. What magic that term engendered.
In a hectic 2-month tour, she visited every capital except Darwin, 70 country towns, and gave 100 speeches. In the pre-television era, she was greeted by enormous crowds, keen to glimpse a young, newly married queen they'd only ever seen in photographs or films.
And the crowds which were present all throughout her tour were absolutely incredible. They estimate that something like 2/3 of Australians at that time actually saw the Queen during her visit.
It turned Cecil Ballard's childhood fascination with the royal family into a lifelong obsession that's led him to surround himself with thousands of pieces of royal memorabilia, china, books, photographs, and even a pet corgi.
How much has this cost you?
I wouldn't like to add it up. I'd be ashamed to say what I probably spent.
Do you ever think maybe it's gone too far?
No, never. No. As a matter of fact, I probably think, how much further can I go?
One of his most prized possessions is a newspaper photograph snapped of the Queen during her 1970 tour, which captured him in the crowd.
There I am in the midst of appearing with my Queen.
His collection is regarded as an important part of Australia's social history, and 200 pieces are held in the National Museum in Canberra.
Back in 1954, he represented what many people felt about the Queen.
I did but see her passing by, and yet I love her till I die.
From the Prime Minister down, royal adulation was at its peak in post-war Anglo-centric Australia. The Queen graced the cover of the Women's Weekly 8 weeks in a row during her first visit, and often during visits in the 60s and 70s. But her 1982 trip was her last cover, and she won't make it this time either, usurped over the years by the younger royals.
There's interest in her. She's not our first choice of cover, no. William and Kate, however, definitely. Yes, when we did their wedding this year, we got a 56% sales increase. The new generation are more interested in the celebrity of royalty than in the standing of royalty as people who run a country.
Australia is a very different country to what it was in 1954. I think far more people in 1954 felt a very direct relationship with the Queen. Obviously, the nature of our population has changed, the diversity of our population has changed, and a lot in Australia has changed.
While she may not sell magazines like she used to, the Queen has commanded enduring respect in Australia through cultural change and rising Republican sentiment.
I think at this stage in Australia's history, affection for the Queen, though, is perhaps one of the biggest obstacles to moving to a republic. Many people would are still very fond of the Queen. I'd actually say the majority of Australians have a great deal of affection for Queen Elizabeth II.
The Queen probably adds 5 or 10% to the vote for the status quo because of her longevity and her obvious dedication to duty. I think it makes it just that little bit harder for some people to make what is a big constitutional change.
Republicans might hope for a change in attitude once her reign is over, but polls around this year's royal wedding, while varied, show support for a republic waning since the failed 1999 referendum, and it's certainly off the political agenda.
There's no doubt that it will depend on the political circumstances falling into place. It's hard to see that at the moment. We have a leader of the opposition who might become the next Prime Minister who is a declared monarchist. We have a Labor Party and a Prime Minister who are Republican in policy terms but are not pushing hard at the moment.
I think that there's still a groundswell for the monarchy here in Australia. She's been a good mother, a good wife, a good queen. I think she set a great example to the Commonwealth.
Arriving in Canberra on Wednesday, the Queen will make day trips to Melbourne and Brisbane before heading to Perth to open CHOGM. She's now aged 85 and it's expected this will be her last Australian tour.
I think we're going to see the Queen saying goodbye to the country that's been very dear to her throughout her reign.
Cecil Ballard hopes it isn't so, but will join monarchist friends in Brisbane to farewell her just in case.
I feel a part of the royal family in a way. It may sound eccentric or silly, but you feel a part of it, part of the ritual and part of the ceremonial. The royal family itself, they mean so much to us. It's a good boy, aren't you?
Natasha Johnson with that report.